On June 11, 1979, in a hospital bed at the UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles, a 72-year-old man slipped away from stomach cancer. The newspapers called him a movie star, but that word was too small. For nearly 50 years, this man had been the face of the American West. He'd ridden through Monument Valley 100 times and stormed beaches in wars that were already over, and along the way, a kid from a farm town in Iowa had quietly become the most recognizable man on the planet. His friends called him Duke. The world called him John Wayne, but almost nothing about that name was true. Not the first name, not the last name. Not even the tough guy legend. The real story of John Wayne is stranger, harder, and far more human than the movies ever let on. This is how a furniture mover became a god of the screen. The Boy from Winterset, 1907. He was born Marion Robert Morrison on May 26, 1907, in a tiny four-room house in Winterset, Iowa, a farming town in the middle of the American heartland. His father, Clyde, was a pharmacist with bad luck and weak lungs. His mother, Molly, was sharp-tongued and hard to please. When the family had a second son, they wanted to name the baby Robert, so they took it from Marion. Overnight, the boy became Marion Mitchell Morrison. It's a small detail, but it tells you everything. Even his own name wasn't really his. Clyde's lungs kept getting worse, and a doctor said the dry desert air might save his life. So around 1914, the family moved west, first to homestead a patch of the Mojave Desert near Palmdale, California, that grew almost nothing. The farm failed. By 1916, they'd given up and moved into the town of Glendale, just north of Los Angeles. And it was there, on the streets of Glendale, that Marion Morrison disappeared. And Duke was born, a dog named Duke. The Morrisons had a big Airedale Terrier that went everywhere the boy went. Every morning, Marion walked past the local fire station with the dog at his heel. The firemen started calling the dog Big Duke, and the skinny kid trailing behind him, Little Duke. Marion loved it. He hated the name Marion. It got him into fistfights. But Duke sounded like somebody. It stuck for the rest of his life. To everyone who actually knew him, he was never John and never Marion. He was Duke. In Glendale, he was a model kid, good grades at Glendale High School, and a genuine football star, big, fast, and disciplined. And that football talent was about to hand him a ticket out. The injury that made him, 1925 to 1926. In 1925, Duke won a football scholarship to the University of Southern California, playing under the legendary coach Howard Jones, and then the ocean took it away. Around 1926, while body surfing off Newport Beach, Duke was slammed into the seabed and wrecked his shoulder. He couldn't play football anymore. No football, no scholarship, no college. He was 19, broke, and out of options. But Coach Jones used to get his players summer jobs at the movie studios in exchange for game tickets for the bosses. So Duke had been hauling furniture and props at the Fox Film Corporation lot in Hollywood. When college fell apart, that summer job became his whole life. The future biggest star in the world started out moving couches for about $35 a week. The prop boy and the director. On those Fox lots, Duke caught the eye of a gruff, brilliant young director named John Ford. Ford liked to test people. One day, he challenged the big prop boy to get into a football stance, then knocked him flat. Most kids would have sulked. Duke got up and knocked Ford flat right back. Ford loved him for it. That moment began one of the most important partnerships in film history, a friendship between John Ford and John Wayne that would last more than 40 years and produce some of the greatest films America ever made. But first, somebody else would give Duke his name. The Big Trail and a Name Out of Thin Air, 1930. In 1930, director Raoul Walsh was hunting for an unknown to lead a massive western called The Big Trail. He spotted the tall prop boy carrying furniture across the lot and gave a 23-year-old furniture mover the lead in a major motion picture. There was one problem. Marion Morrison was no name for a marquee, so the Fox executives sat in a room and picked a new one, borrowing it from the Revolutionary War General Mad, Anthony Wayne. They thought Anthony was too formal and shortened it to John. Duke wasn't even in the room. He had no say at all. He walked in as Marion Morrison and walked out as John Wayne. The big trail was supposed to make him a star. It was shot in an experimental widescreen format on 70mm film, with real wagon trains crossing real rivers, and it bombed hard. The country was sinking into the Great Depression, and most theaters couldn't afford the equipment to show the widescreen version. The film lost a fortune, and the studio blamed the unknown kid they'd gambled on. John Wayne was finished before he'd even started. The Wilderness Years, 1930s. What came next would have broken most people, and it lasted nearly a decade. Through the 1930s, John Wayne ground out a living in the cheapest corner of Hollywood, Poverty Row. He made dozens of low-budget westerns and serials for tiny studios like Mascot, Monogram, and later Republic Pictures. Shot in 3 or 4 days on tiny budgets with nearly identical plots. At one point, the studio tried to turn him into a singing cowboy named Singin' Sandy, even though Wayne couldn't sing a note, and his voice had to be dubbed. He found it humiliating. But those wilderness years did something in secret. By the end of the decade, Wayne had made around 60 films. He'd learned how to move, how to fight on screen, how to fill a frame. He wasn't a star, but he'd quietly become one of the most experienced actors in Hollywood. A loaded gun waiting for someone to aim him. That someone was John Ford, Stagecoach and the Ringo Kid. 1939. For years, Ford had watched his friend waste away, biding his time. In 1939, he finally made his move. Ford was directing a Western called Stagecoach, and he wanted Wayne as the Ringo Kid. The studio fought him. They wanted a real star, not a washed-up B-movie cowboy. But Ford won. He took Wayne out to Monument Valley on the Utah-Arizona border, that landscape of towering red sandstone buttes almost no filmmaker had used before. Ford turned it into the very image of the American West. When Stagecoach premiered in 1939, it was a sensation, and its most electric moment was Ringo's introduction, a swooping camera racing toward Wayne's face as he twirls a rifle. After nearly 10 years in the wilderness, John Wayne became a star at 31. The kid from Winterset had finally arrived. The war he didn't fight, 1941 to 1945, then came the most complicated chapter of his life. On December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor and America went to war. Hollywood emptied out. Clark Gable, Jimmy Stewart, and Henry Fonda all put on uniforms. John Wayne did not. He was 34, married, and a father, which qualified him for a family deferment. As the war went on, his studio repeatedly filed paperwork to keep their new star out of the draft. He was making them too much money to lose. The result is one of the great ironies of American culture. The man who would come to symbolize the American fighting soldier, who would charge up Iwo Jima on screen, never served a single day in the real military. Those closest to him believed it haunted him for life. Many historians argue the ferocious patriotism of his later years was driven, in part, by guilt over the war he sat out. He spent the rest of his career making up for it the only way he knew how: on film. The Golden Years, 1948 to 1959. After the war, Wayne didn't just stay a star, he became an institution. In about a decade, he made the films that would define him forever. In 1948, director Howard Hawks cast him in the cattle drive epic Red River, where Wayne played a hard, aging, almost villainous man. It shocked everyone, including John Ford, who reportedly watched it and said, "I didn't know the big son of a bitch could act." In 1949, he played the doomed Marine Sergeant Stryker in Sands of Iwo Jima, earning his first Academy Award nomination. In 1952, Ford took him to the village of Cong in County Mayo, Ireland, for the romantic comedy The Quiet Man, proof he could be charming, not just tough. And in 1956, the two men made what many critics now call the greatest film either ever touched, The Searchers. Back in Monument Valley, Wayne played Ethan Edwards, a bitter racist Civil War veteran hunting his kidnapped niece. It's a dark, magnificent performance that revealed a depth audiences had never imagined. By the end of the 1950s, with Rio Bravo in 1959, John Wayne was the single biggest box office draw in the world. The Alamo, the dream that nearly ruined him, 1960. But Wayne wanted more than to star in great movies. He wanted to make one, his way. For years, he'd been obsessed with one story above all, the Battle of the Alamo. To him, it was the purest American legend, a small band of men choosing to die for freedom. So in 1960, he bet everything on it. He directed the Alamo, produced it, and starred as the frontiersman Davy Crockett. He built a full-scale replica of the Alamo out on the dusty plains near Brackettville, Texas, and funded it by pouring in a fortune of his own money and mortgaging nearly everything he owned. The film earned a Best Picture nomination, but it didn't make back what it cost, and the strain nearly wiped him out. The dream project of his life almost bankrupted him, and he climbed out the only way he knew, by going back to work. Film after film. The Big C, 1964. Then his own body turned on him. John Wayne was a monster of a smoker. By many accounts, 5 or 6 packs of cigarettes a day for decades. In 1964, doctors found a malignant tumor in his left lung. The surgery took an entire lung and 2 of his ribs. He was lucky to survive it all. In that era, stars hid illness. Cancer was something whispered about. His advisors begged him to keep it secret. Terrified audiences wouldn't believe in an invincible cowboy with one lung. Wayne refused. He went public, told the world he'd had cancer, and famously said he'd licked the Big C. He turned his survival into a dare. A message that the disease could be beaten. It was, in a strange way, the bravest role he ever played, and he played it as himself. True Grit and the Oscar, 1969. By the late 1960s, Wayne was an aging man with one lung, and a new generation thought of him as a relic. Then came Rooster Cogburn. In 1969's True Grit, Wayne played a fat, drunk, one-eyed, washed-up U.S. Marshal and leaned into every bit of it. He didn't try to look heroic. He looked old and broken down and wonderful, and audiences fell in love all over again. At the Academy Awards in April 1970, after 40 years, around 200 films, and a lifetime of being dismissed as just a cowboy, John Wayne finally won the Oscar for Best Actor. It was the validation he'd chased his entire career. The Shootist, Art Imitating Life, 1976. His final film is almost too perfect to be real. In 1976, Wayne starred in The Shootist as J.B. Brooks, an old legendary gunfighter who comes to town and learns he's dying of cancer, and who wants only to die with dignity, on his own terms. A dying movie legend playing a dying legend, slowly succumbing to the same disease, quietly returning to his own body. Audiences had no idea how close to the truth it really was. It was the last time the world would ever see John Wayne on screen. The Last Ride, 1979. The cancer came back, this time in his stomach. After heart surgery in 1978, doctors found the new tumor in early 1979. This time, there would be no licking the Big C. John Wayne died on June 11, 1979 at the UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 72. He was buried near the ocean he loved in Newport Beach, California. Not far from the same coastline where half a century earlier, a wave had ended his football career and accidentally pushed him toward the movies. That same year, Congress voted to award him the Congressional Gold Medal. Its inscription read simply, John Wayne American. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The airport in Orange County was renamed John Wayne Airport, where his statue still stands today. So here's the strange truth at the center of it all. The first name was invented by studio executives. The last name was borrowed from a dead general. The tough guy soldier never went to war. The invincible cowboy was a man with one lung fighting cancer for the last 15 years of his life. Almost everything about John Wayne was, in some sense, a construction. And yet, for 3 generations, when people around the world tried to picture what an American was supposed to look like, sound like, stand for, they pictured Duke, a pharmacist's son from a 4-room house in Winterset, Iowa, who got knocked down again and again by a failed farm, a broken shoulder, a movie that bombed, 10 years in the wilderness, a project that nearly bankrupted him, and a disease that finally killed him, and who, every single time, got back up and climbed back into the saddle. Maybe that's why the legend never died, because the real John Wayne wasn't the man who never got hurt. He was the man who always got back up. If you made it this far, do one simple thing: subscribe to John Wayne's legacy and ride along with us, because the Duke's story doesn't end here. More chapters of John Wayne's legacy are still coming: the films, the friendships, and the moments history almost forgot. Until then, keep your boots on and your powder dry.